Do you like magic tricks? I'm sort of obsessed with magic tricks. It blows my mind when I see a good magic trick, especially a good card trick. It's done right in front of you. You know it's not real, and you know it's an illusion constructed by a skilled magician. But yet, when you see it, you are left in this place where the illusion of the trick is far more real than the truth that it's just a trick being played on your perception of reality. And it gets me every time. But what about the magic tricks we play on ourselves? What about the illusions we create for ourselves about who we are and who other people are that become more real than the truth of what our reality is? Well, have I got a pretentious term for you that lies at the heart of a heck of a lot of American movies and literature. And that term is truth and illusion.
Truth and illusion, George. You don't know the difference.
No, but we must carry on as though we did.
Amen.
This concept is pervasive throughout American film and literature, and for good reason. A lot of our society has been based on hiding the truth of what's real behind the illusion of what we wish to project onto the world. Think of the housewife in the 50s who on the outside is living this perfect life, but on the inside, she's dying inside by the weight of said life. Or if you want a movie example, think of Brick in Cat on a Hot Tin Roof, who at least in the stage version, and it's alluded to in the film version, is gay. And he's trying to live this perfect life, this perfect Southern life with a beautiful wife, Elizabeth Taylor, but he's dying on the inside because he's not being who he really is.
Why won't you face the truth just once? About Skipper, about me, about yourself.
Hey, Maggie.
Maybe I'm no good either. Nobody's good. But Brick, Skipper is dead. And I'm alive.
Maggie.
Maggie the cat is alive. I'm alive. Why are you afraid of the truth?
Truth?
Also, this idea of perfect on the outside and dying on the inside sounds a lot like social media influencers. And I am a social media influencer, so I can confirm that to all of you, I'm making an announcement. That is actually true. And Eyes Wide Shut as a movie uses a rhyming story structure, which can get kind of complicated. And if you want me to make a video on that, leave a comment down below. It's also important to look at this movie as two stories, where in the first half or so, it's all play on the illusions that we play out in our lives and how we wish our lives to be. And the second half or so is confronting the truth of those illusions. To get into this movie, we open up with Bill and Alice Harford. They are on the outside, this beautiful married couple. Bill is a doctor, Alice is a housewife. They are the idyllic couple from the movies. But little did Bill know, that was all about to change.
Did you say little did he know?
Yes.
I once gave an entire seminar on little did he know. Son of a bitch, Harold. Little did he know means there's something he doesn't know. That means there's something you don't know.
So this movie opens up with Alice and Bill going to a party. Bill reconnects with this guy, Nick Nightingale, who is a med school dropout that Bill went to college with and now is a piano player. Alice dances with this svelte Hungarian guy who is trying to seduce her. Bill walks with these models who are trying to seduce him.
Ladies, where exactly are we going?
Where the rainbow ends.
Where the rainbow ends.
And if you've seen this movie, you know there are two parties in this story. And we'll get to the second party here in a bit. But the important thing, like I said, is that everything in this movie is a reflection of something else. So in this first party, it's important to understand that everyone is wearing a metaphorical mask. Alice is wearing the metaphorical wife mask.
I'm married.
You know she wants to be seduced by this svelte Hungarian man. She obviously wants to take him up on his offers to have an exchange, one might say. But she doesn't do it because she's wearing the mask, I am married. And the pairing of these two interactions with Alice, with the svelte Hungarian man, and Bill with the models is an allusion to the mask we wear out in public. The face and the image of what we want people to see of us. Where you want to do something, but you don't because you have to wear a specific mask that keeps you from doing that thing. And in Alice's case, it is fracking this Hungarian guy. And in Bill's case, it's going over the rainbow with these models, so to speak. It's poetry, if you will. But the most interesting part about the first party is not Bill and Alice wanting to keep their mask up, to keep the illusion that they're married and that they don't want to, in fact, have a late night rendezvous with somebody that is not their husband and wife. The most interesting part about the first party is this interaction between Bill and Ziegler, the owner of the house.
We had a speedball or a snowball or whatever the hell they call it. You know, it's heroin.
You are a very, very lucky girl. You understand?
Yeah.
You're gonna need some rehab. You know that, don't you?
Bill, I know I don't have to mention this, but this is just between us, okay?
What's interesting is that we see in this scene an explicit request from Ziegler to Bill to keep up his illusion, keep up the facade of him not being somebody that is like this. And the thing about this movie is that there is a clear and distinct line that is drawn about who can wear their mask and who can't, who can live in illusions and who can't. And do I have news for you? It's the richest and most powerful people that can afford to live in their own illusions and fantasies. Everyone else in this movie has their illusions and fantasies and the masks that they're wearing out in public crash down upon them. And to get into the first instance of truth and illusion in this movie and having the illusions that Bill lives in crash down on his head, we go to this fight with Bill and Alice. Alice is angry that Bill was walking with these models. And Bill says to Alice that, wait a second, you were dancing with this svelte Hungarian guy. Then they get into an argument over gender dynamics. Bill thinks women, unlike men, just want security and protection and they don't care about sex.
Men have to stick it in every place they can, but for women it is just about security and commitment and whatever the fuck else.
A little oversimplified, Alice, but yes, something like that.
If you men only knew.
And then Alice fills him in that women do, in fact, like dat dick, as the kids say. Alice drives this point home by explaining to Bill that she has had fantasies of cheating on him. And in the middle of this conversation of Alice explaining that she has fantasized about having an affair, Bill starts to have an existential crisis. But then the phone rings, and Bill once again is summoned to the house of a rich guy who dies, and this lady, who is his daughter, starts to kiss Bill, which punctuates Alice's point. And she starts to profess her love for him, even though they barely know each other. This scene, like every scene in this movie, is bashing our head in with the theme of truth and illusion. But it also does this, and I think more interesting, by using this line.
I think I've been more afraid of the way it was actually going to happen than his death itself.
And this woman is more afraid of the possibilities, the fantasies of how her father could die than him actually dying, which I think really kind of drives home the point of truth and illusion in this movie, that sometimes it's the fantasy or the idea of something happening that is more terrifying than the thing actually happening. Bill then leaves and he starts to walk the streets of a Christmas light-filled New York, which, a side note here, this is an actual set. This was not shot on location, which, if you've ever been to New York, is why this city doesn't really feel like New York. It's an illusion, one might say. And it's sort of like a dream. Maybe, Bill is about to have a nightmare on Christmas Eve.
Nightmare, 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 nightmare.
But moving on, Bill meets another lady of a particular service, let's say, and Bill tries to hire her for her services. But before they do the deed, Alice calls. And Bill in this scene is enamored with the illusion of this woman. He's enamored with the fantasy of being with this woman. But when Alice calls, he's confronted with the truth that he is married. See, truth and illusion, folks. Truth and illusion.
Truth and illusion, George. You don't know the difference.
No, but we must carry on as though we did.
Amen.
Bill then walks into a bar, and what do you know? It is Nick Nightingale, the almost doctor turned piano player. Nick tells Bill about a party that he's going to later that night where he will play the piano blindfolded. He goes into graphic detail about how crazy these parties are and how there's a lot of F-wording. There's a lot of F-wording at this party. Bill, just like with the previous scene with the lady of a particular service, he's enamored with the fantasy of this party. He's enamored with the idea of engaging in the debaucherous arts with these people. So he convinces Nick to give him the password and address for this party. And the password to this party to get in is not only a Beethoven opera, Fidelio, but Fidelio is also the Latin word for faithful. And do I have to tell you that everyone at this party is graphically unfaithful? But before Bill goes to the party, he has to get a costume. And he goes to this costume shop called Rainbow Fashions, which is a callback, of course, to the models.
Ladies, where exactly are we going?
Do not seek the treasure.
Where the rainbow ends.
Where the rainbow ends.
Because Bill is about to go over the freaking rainbow and find the pot of gold. But this little detail is kind of all an illusion to maybe this is all a dream. Maybe this is not real. And that is what is real and what is not real is throughout this movie. Like I said, truth and illusion. But I don't know if this is going to be a normal dream for Bill. I'm pretty sure, and I'm guarantee you, that this is the beginning of a nightmare.
Nightmare, 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 nightmare.
What is it?
But anyway, Bill buys a mask and cloak and heads on to the party, still consumed by the existential crisis that Alice's confession of wanting to have an affair has wrought on him. Bill walks into the party and sees the Illuminati doing this cult-like ceremony. This ceremony that's wrapped in illusion, if you will. And going back to what I said previously, the people at this party, they're engaging in pretty gratuitous behavior. And it's interesting, the reflection of this party with the first party, where everyone at the first party had to wear a metaphorical mask, right? Everyone is wearing a mask. They can't really do what they want to do because of the mask they're wearing. The mask of being a husband, the mask of being a wife. They want to engage in this behavior, but they can't. But in this party, it's the complete opposite. Everyone is wearing physical masks in order to engage in this kind of behavior. And that's kind of what I love about this movie, is that it mixes the metaphor with the physical, and it pairs them up and makes reflections of each other. And that's what I just find fascinating about this movie. And you can find it throughout the movie. In every scene, pretty much, there's some element of truth and illusion going on. But anyway, like I said, Bill walks into this Illuminati cult gathering. He's quickly taken away by this naked lady, and she warns him that he needs to leave. But before he can leave, he is found out. He's brought before the Illuminati, told to undress and ask what the second password is. And Bill says he can't remember it. We're going to get to this in a second because this goes into whether all of this is real or not. What's interesting about this scene, and what we'll soon find out, is this scene kind of turns truth and illusion on its head. It's a party of all these powerful people wrapped in an illusion of this ceremony. But this illusion is actually the truth. That being that these powerful people all gather together to engage in this kind of debauchery. And the real illusion is that powerful people aren't like this. And this, if you go back to the first party where you have Ziegler ask Bill to keep up his illusion by keeping everything quiet, right? Because all of this is done in secret. This is the truth of how they want to act. This is their nature. This is who they really are. And they have to hide themselves to be who they are, who they really are. And in this case, awful human beings. Again, this is a reflection of the first party where everyone wants to get it on, especially Alice. but she doesn't because of the truth of the marriage she lives in. And finally, to wrap things up with this party, before things get really, really bad for Bill at this Illuminati party, the naked lady shows up and sacrifices herself for him. And now we're at the second half of the movie. And the second half of the movie is all about the truth behind the illusions and the fantasies. It's all about the consequences of indulging in said fantasies. And we're about to get into Alice's truth to her fantasy. So Bill gets home and Alice is having a nightmare, which her nightmare honestly deserves its own video, picking it apart. But the important thing that you need to know about her dream is it represents her shame of indulging her fantasy of having an affair. And not only is Alice's nightmare uncovering a layer of shame beneath her fantasy of having an affair, but this scene is directly after the gratuitous and graphic Illuminati party, where again, I need to remind you the password to said party is Fidelio, which is Latin for faithful. And having this scene come directly after the gratuitous Illuminati party, it seems what Kubrick is saying is that there is a real cost to indulging in our fantasies or the illusions that we live in. This is also not to mention the fact that everyone that is an object or servicer of a fantasy in this movie or is indulging in a fantasy pays a cost. There's a cost to indulging in such fantasies and illusion. With Alice, it's shame, and we're about to find out some more costs here in a second. But the only people who do not pay a cost in this movie for indulging in their fantasies and illusions are, you guessed it, the rich and powerful. What's brilliant about this movie and how it deals with truth and illusion is that it's not as cut and dry as other movies. Like, for instance, Cat on a Hot Tin Roof, where Brick is secretly gay. Or Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf, where Elizabeth Taylor and Richard Burton pretend to have a kid. What is truly brilliant about this movie is that it blends truth and illusion together to the point where we as the viewer don't know what's true. We don't know what's real in this movie. Is Alice's truth really that she wants to have an affair and she doesn't love Bill? Or are her fantasies of cheating an illusion that she lives in and is ashamed of? Because the reality is that she is married and she really loves Bill. And this is a lot like real life, which is far from cut and dry when it comes to the illusions and fantasies that we live in and the truth of what our reality really is. For instance, if you've had a divorce, then you know that there is this fantasy, this illusion that we live in about how our relationship is supposed to work out, how things are supposed to be. You're supposed to fall in love, have kids, live happily ever after. And the reality is, for a lot of people, that's just a fantasy. It's not the reality or the truth of what's actually going on in a relationship. And we do this with everything. Like, I lived in a illusion or a delusion that I can handle drugs and alcohol, which, I cannot. But I lived in this fantasy and this illusion that, I could control it and my life was fine with it. When the reality is that everything around me was crumbling to pieces. And I think that's kind of the point of this movie. For a lot of our lives, we live in the fantasies of how we wish our lives would be, right? For Alice, it's having an affair. For Bill, it's being the doctor and the husband and having the committed wife, to having the picture perfect marriage, right? And the reality is those fantasies that we live in rarely are the truth. They're rarely the reality that we actually live in. And what I love about this movie is that it brilliantly blends the truth and reality together to where, a lot like real life, we don't know really what's actually real and true about ourselves or about other people. And it takes a long process of figuring that out and going down deep, which we'll get into in a second, going down deep inside and looking at all those things to figure out what is actually true. This is at the heart of truth and illusion in this movie. It's about how long and how far we can go playing make-believe with ourselves and everyone else before that becomes unsustainable and comes crashing down on our heads. Anyway, to wrap things up with the movie, some things happen, yada, yada, yada. Bill tries to find the piano player, but he's probably dead. Yada, yada, yada. I'm leaving out an important part about the Rainbow Fashions owner, so this video doesn't get deranked. Yada, yada, yada. Bill is still having an existential crisis. Yada, yada, yada. He finds out that an ex-beauty queen died that happens to be the girl from the first party.
You're gonna need some rehab. You know that, don't you?
Yada, yada, yada. Bill finds the lady of the night he almost did it with, has a devastating, contagious disease that I will not name because that will probably get this video deranked also. But again, this plot point uncovers a truth underneath the fantasy he was living under, almost doing the dirty with her. And that truth is that if he indulged in those fantasies, if he indulged in the illusion that he could do this, or the delusion, he would have probably gotten a contagious disease, which again is that there's consequences. There's consequences to indulging in our fantasies. And that's, I think that's one of the main points of this movie is that, there's a cost to be paid when indulging in fantasies, or indulge not only in fantasies, but indulging in the illusions that we live in that aren't based in reality. Again, back to relationships. If we don't live in the reality of what a relationship is, and if we don't live in the reality of who we are in a relationship and who somebody else is in a relationship, that delusion and that fantasy of what this relationship is not sustainable. It will crumble before your eyes, and I think that is, we get beaten over the head with that idea that there is a cost. There is a cost to living in fantasies and illusions and delusions in this movie. But to wrap things up, we're at the last scene-ish. Bill is summoned to Ziegler's house once again. And in this scene, we really get into blending what is real and what isn't. Ziegler explains to Bill how much trouble he was in the night before. And that party was, in fact, the Illuminati. And wait for it.
There was a woman there who tried to warn me.
The threats, the girl's warnings, her last-minute intervention. Suppose I said that all of that was staged.
Was she the woman at the party?
She was.
The woman lying dead in the morgue was the woman at the party.
Yes?
Do you mind telling me what kind of fucking charade ends with somebody turning up dead?
It was always going to be just a matter of time with her. Remember? You told her so yourself. You remember the one thing that OD in my bathroom?
You're gonna need some rehab. You know that, don't you?
So we are left here with this question. What about all of this is true and what is not true? Or what is truth and what is illusion? Did the naked lady really overdose? Was she really trying to warn him? Were all of the things that he has been through real? Or were they just constructed to scare him? And again, this goes back to my previous point about this movie. There's a line that is drawn about who can afford to live in fantasies and who can afford to live in illusions. And I have news for you. It is probably not you or me. But getting to the end of the movie, Bill walks into his bedroom and sees the mask that he was wearing at this party laid next to his wife sleeping. Bill then breaks down and tells her everything that happened, which is a mirror to her confession in the beginning of the movie. And with all the truth that they can truth and with all the illusions they can illusion, they are left with only one option.
Only as sure as I am that the reality of one night, let alone that of a whole lifetime, can never be the whole truth.
And no dream is ever just a dream.
The important thing is, we're awake now.
Wait, that's the wrong clip. They are only left with one option.
There is something very important that we need to do as soon as possible.
What's that?
Fuck.
See, folks, the thing about this movie is that every bit of it is about truth and illusion. Everyone in this movie is confronted with the realities they blindly ignore and have to have it all crashing down on them so they can wake up to what reality really is. And that reality and fantasy are often mixed together so thoroughly that sometimes it's easier just to accept that we may never know what is true and what is in fact an illusion. And I know that is confusing, but it's what I love about this movie. And what this movie is really about is about the dark internal journey we all have to take in life to find out what is the truth about ourselves and our place in this world. And as someone who is in recovery and has been sober 7 years, this is a journey, an internal journey I have taken many times. It's what Carl Jung called the process of individuation. It's a process that involves going down and playing in the mud and pig shit of the soul and looking at all the things that have happened to us and the things we have done and coming to an understanding and recognition of the crazy patterns of behavior all those things have manifested in our lives. This is important because just like Bill, our alternative is to live in an unawareness and illusion of what is true and what is not true. What is true about ourselves and our lives and the reality we live in, and what are the fantasies that we choose to live in. A fantasy for me, for example, that I lived in for a long time is I can drink and do drugs and I will be fine. I can stop when I want. I have control over this. That is an illusion that I lived in for a very long time. And the truth of the matter is, just like with Bill and with Alice, if we live in those illusions and fantasies long enough, they will break, and it will have catastrophic consequences for our lives and people around us. And, I must say that magic tricks are fun and all. They're a lot of fun. I enjoy magic tricks. But the magic tricks we play on ourselves are just really, really exhausting. So this video is all to say,
stop it. Get some help.
Truth and illusion, George. You don't know the difference.
No, but we must carry on as though we did.
Amen.